I might faint. Because I've taken this high dose and I'm getting like...
Hello, Hello.
Hello.
Hello. We're here. Here we are at Critical Path, and this is the beginning of the Improvisational Practices Symposium. This is the first public event, and we're in a real-time stream called the Suspension of Time and Space. It's a DIY real-time meeting between us. This is Tony Osborne, Martin Delamo, and Katerina
Mocciola.
We're live in Sydney, and in Bangalore, India is Hema, and I can't say her second name either.
Hemabharathy Palani.
And in Perth is at the Move Me Festival is Andrew Morrish and Peter Trotman.
Hello.
And at Nottingham, at Dance 4 in Nottingham, is Miranda, Wheen and Sally Doughty.
Hello.
So
Great.
the idea, this is the symposium here in Sydney is going to go for 10 days, and the idea is to bring together a large group of people who are interested in improvisational practices to really try and bring out and expand some of the nuances and impact of what those people are doing in their practices. And I think it's one of the terms that becomes quite generalised, whereas really everyone's practice has a kind of a unique focus, but there's also a lot to be revealed in the sharing between each other. So we've got a number of workshops in Sydney, and Martin and Kat are going to talk about the workshops here in the public program.
Yeah, the symposium here kicked off on the weekend, and with a Impro lab called Impro Exchange, which I facilitated for 3 days. We've already had 2 workshops by Tony Osborne and Alice Cummins. Other workshops to come are by Ross Crisp, Ross Warby, Kate Champion. We have workshops by Victoria Hunt and Dean Walsh, and also a seminar series facilitated by Andrew Morrish and John D. Keane. And in the evenings there is a public program, so tonight is the first event, and it'll continue for the next couple of weeks.
And I'm going to be presenting the public program, and
this is like the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah.
You wish not.
And there's going to be a series of performances. Some of them are free, some of them are ticketed events, and we're going to start with Saturday night with Emma Saunders with Bat in the Cave. Emma has invited, is curating the event, has invited most of the participants to take part to this group improvisation. And on Sunday we're going to have Rosalind Crisp presenting Unwrapping Dance, which is a dance lecture event. And then we're going to have on Monday the Body Weather Improvisations with Tess de Quincey, Frank van der Ven, Peter Fraser, Victoria Hunt and Linda Luke. On Tuesday night we're going to have a Contact Improvisation Jam with Alejandro Rolandi. And we're going to proceed on Wednesday with Martin Delamo, and it's going to be in conversation with Andrew Morrish, Nalina White, and Tess de Quincey. We're going to have a break for one night on Thursday next week. And we're going to proceed with Rose Warby, she's going to be presenting 2 solos, No Time to Fly and Court Dance. To continue with Whippet, curated by Ryuichi Fujimura, and then we're gonna wrap up the whole symposium with the open house, which Martin and I are gonna be loosely curating. And
loosely curated means improvise, basically, I guess.
So this event, we've also worked with Paul Selwyn Norton, who's the director of Strut Dance in Perth, and he has curated a festival called the Move Me Festival in Perth, and there's been this wonderful opportunity to have a caravan really with a number of artists who are going from Sydney to Perth and Perth to Sydney, and really trying to build up this bridge between either side of the country. And it's been so Andrew and Ros and Rosalind are in Perth at the moment. Rosalind Crisp's arriving in Sydney tonight. Andrew Morrish will arrive in Sydney on Sunday night, and then Ros will be on Monday morning. Alejandro was in Perth last week, seeing the performances of Jacob Lira and David Corbett. I think there's also performance by Michael Schumacher. So it's been a really kind of exciting time. There are a number of Western Australian people who are also participating in the workshops here. And then, I'm thinking of tonight, this is the first time we've done a real-time event. So for me, it's quite important, exciting really, to have, a more emergent event where we're cutting from, the morning in the UK to the evening in Sydney, and then in between in India and also in Perth. And I think that in 10 years' time, it's really not going to matter where we are. There's tools like Google Hangouts and other kinds of technologies are going to make it possible for us to feel like we're in the same space as each other wherever we are in the world. So finding the spaces in between here that are created through this kind of digital disruption are quite exciting spaces. So we're not really sure what's actually going to transpire in the shift tonight, and this kind of sense what latency will offer and what the digital pixelation will offer, but we're ready to play with it. Okay, so we're going to hand over to Hema, who's going to talk to us a little bit about her traditional practice and how that connects with her contemporary improvisation. Hema, over to you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Margie. This is Hemabharathy Palani from Bangalore, Art Gallery. Just a small introduction. As I am trained in Indian classical dance form, Bharatnatyam and Kuchipudi. As you can see me, as I'm talking also, I'm using a lot of hand gestures and my movements is already started improvising. In one hand, I would like to talk about the body memory. While I am trying to practice my improvisation in daily practice, it's mainly the tools which I use is, one, not to forget what is a body memory as a training, what is a resolutions left in the body. And another one is as I've started using a lot of hand gestures, but also it's about what makes it almost finding a miles, trying to dig at something which is a hidden secret in different parts of the body. It's almost like an hidden secret which I need to find it. It's like under the mud. I need to dig it and find it out. So maybe for 30 seconds or something, I would like to demonstrate more than I'm talking. Yeah?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Say something.
Do you think Andrew's stuck like that? Or do you think it's a still image? That's interesting, isn't it?
Oh, it's everybody stuck.
Except us.
Except us.
One is about a very small movement, which is an external movement. How that internalizing the internal movement, that's what I feel. the connection between the outer and external, external and then internal, which is, that's what I wanted to say. It's like a body memory which is left trying to dig and finding out in terms of in my practice of improvising, especially when I'm trying to, even though I have a different task and trying to make a different modules in the process, this is a one of the thing which questions me, like, what are you trying to improvise? Is that already the memory which is in your body, or something which you don't know? It's a hidden. That's what I feel. Is the time up, or do I have time more?
You can say a little bit more, or we could cut to someone else, Hamer, and then come back.
Yeah,
Andrew,
sure.
Andrew and Peter, would you like to join in?
Sure. Peter?
Yes, Andrew.
Well, Peter, can you tell me what you mean by improvisation?
Oh, what do I mean by improvisation?
Well, just following on from what that conversation about, what's your relationship to your body when you're improvising? Are you doing this kind of mining excavation that Hammer's talking about there?
I do have a sense that there's always something, trying to find something deeper in the material, but I suppose that for me encompasses not just the body, but also, because we often have some sort of narrative or story or ideas or images or sensations, so trying to kind of find deeper layers within that and digging deeper. And there's usually a physical or sensory basis to that, like, I mean, kind of getting physical as I'm talking. So,
yes.
So for me, that's all interconnected. Yeah. But it's not just physical.
No.
That's kind of, deeper into ideas and feelings and emotions and all sorts of things. Yeah.
And I guess we should be clear, we're talking about improvisation in performance.
Yes.
That's the only thing we know anything about. So we're talking about the idea of improvising as we perform, all the other ways improvisation might be used. I was listening to the Reef Lectures last night, which goes to air on the BBC, and it was a guy talking about why doctors fail, and he's going through doctors fail because of ignorance, doctors fail because of ineptitude, but there's also, he described it as there's a necessary fallibility, that we can never know everything. We could never know perfectly how every individual will respond to a medical thing. And I'm just picking up on what I was talking about then, this idea there's always something to be explored and inquired into. And that will always be there. There's a kind of always an unknown. There's a lot we know, and I think that's working with everything we know in the body and in our imagination and our relationship to the audience. We know a lot of that, and for me as a performer, I kind of build a foundation with what I know, but the purpose of what I know is to allow me to excavate into the territory that's unknown, or the things I haven't noticed before, or the things I haven't thought before, or the things I haven't imagined before. So there's a relationship between this knowing and not knowing, these two worlds. And I very much like the kind of mining or excavating images that I got from listening to Hammer talk, where we're really digging in and trying to find what is under the mud that we know already. And I think the means by which you do that really have to do with, the implication of her talking about the body memory, the training that you have used to get to that point. So for some people that's a purely physical training, for others it's a combination of voice and imagination and, and the body and all of those things. So that's kind of the role that Peter and I sit in, an excavation via the imagination into kind of all aspects of ourselves. But I do believe the foundation is the body, that without the kind of the world of sensation, there is nothing to explore. So you can't really come away from the body as its kind of fundamental layout.
So there's always a questioning, like, what is going on in any moment, what is happening, what's going on, where am I at, where am I within the material. It's just always that inquiring and digging deeper.
Yeah. We feel selfish now.
While you were speaking, Andrew, I was thinking it's no accident that we're involved in the dance world, because there's a lot of improvisation goes on, but if we weren't interested in the body, we'd probably be stand-up comedians. I think everything comes from that. That's having taught 2 workshops in the last couple of days, I realised that that's exactly where the material materializes from. That we investigate our state of feeling and sensation at any given moment, and that gives rise to intellectual ideas and narrative ideas, which then manifest through the performance.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, you know, I think over the last 30 odd years that we've all been practicing, many people would have questioned whether we are part of dance or not. But I've never felt, I mean, I've always felt at home in the dance world more than the theatre world. You know, and there's certainly more money to be made and more commercial possibilities if I was to transfer my work into a kind of theatre, improv kind of thing. What are you laughing at, man? But the dance world is where I feel like some kind of unfortunate relative that came to dinner and stayed. But it's the dance, because of that, the fundamental being the body, sensation and attention on the body, from which everything else arises. I've always felt more at home in dance than anywhere else, and still do. Still operate primarily in dance contexts.
Can we cut to Sally and Miranda? Miranda, Sally.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
So maybe Sally and I are just meeting for the first time.
Hi.
Hi, Sally. So perhaps it's a good point for me to ask you what you do and how improvisation is part of your practice.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to refer back to something that Andrew just said. When you referred to the doctor's experience and that we can never know everything. I think a big part of my practice is that I aim to develop kind of consciousness, if you like, or awareness of what I am doing, so that things aren't necessarily left to chance, although I know there's a whole Google chat room to be had about chance and improvisation, etc. But I think in my practice I endeavour to notice and to register and to acknowledge the choices that I'm making. So whether that's through excavating and mining, paying attention to, I aim for a high degree of awareness about the choices that I'm making. And I think it ties back into, Peter, something that you said just now about that kind of paying attention to. It seems to me that there's kind of various places on the spectrum of awareness or no awareness in improvisation. I can improvise like crazy and not have a clue what it is I'm doing. Or I can improvise and I can try to bring a sense of mindfulness and consciousness to the choices that I'm making. And it's that in my practice that I aspire to, that I aim for.
I think that's relevant for what I do as well. I work mainly as an independent dancer and quite often for other people. But as an independent dancer, needing to offer a substantial amount of material as choreographic potential. And I think improvisation seems to be very important to understand the information that's within my body, and it's this bringing to a state of awareness that makes this material available for choreography. And improvisation is this essential thing to bring that possibility to the surface. And I think these conversations about mining and excavating are so pertinent, even though I don't necessarily do a lot of improvisation as performance. But it's a way of really finding the information that I have inserted into my body.
Yeah. And so if you use improvisation as a way of generating material in the rehearsal process, how do you then recall that improvised material?
Well, I think the role of other people is really very, very helpful, and other people to ask what is that you just did then, and that challenges me to then really question what that is, and to make it into something that's useful that we can pop aside or develop more.
And because a big thing in my practice is about noticing. Noticing what I'm doing and noticing what's informing my decisions. Is it space? Is it temperature? Is it smell? Is it you in the space with me? So I wonder to what extent noticing comes into your practice.
I think
Miranda.
You just reminded me of, I did some training with Martin Delamo there in Sydney, and he used to call his training performance training. And this idea has really always stuck with me, the idea of training for performance in some way. So I think this act of training for noticing has been a really useful tool or a mode of thinking while I'm improvising or while I'm dancing. Yeah, training this sense of noticing what's happening and being hypersensitive and aware to what is happening in order to then possibly return to it later. Otherwise it's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I had a question for Miranda and also for Hema. Is this the relationship between improvising as a practice, as a performance practice, but also the difference between improvising that's generating material? And, you know, in the curating of this program, the series of workshops at Critical Path, you know, I've tried to really have a variety of choreographers and improvisational practice people who are talking about improvisation as source material, but also as performance material, and the relationship between those two things, because I'm wanting to deepen a little bit the way that people are thinking about improvisation, because I find it a bit generalized. And from what I've seen in a lot of contemporary dance practices, the source material generally comes from dancers improvising in the studio. And if I could ask you, Hema, what the relationship is between your improvised practice and your making choreography. Could you speak about that?
Yeah. I think, for example, every day we do the same thing. We get up, we brush, we eat, sometimes same breakfast. What I'm trying to say is that itself, there are few changes each time it's happening, even though we are doing the same thing. Same thing which happens to me is like the source material is something from maybe something small I would like to talk. Is, for example, maybe this is a male and this is a female. It means, which is already a big meaning, which is already a big source, which is already a big meaning to itself, the gesture has. And then to take which is an available source, and making into a repetition, like keep repeating the same thing, and then I don't know what it comes, those kind of a smaller thing which is a source for me to also to improvise while performing and also while improvising. Both it has a interdependent connection which I feel like a hidden miles which I have to almost like a being curious but also being conscious to find this source, how its material can be dematerialized and dematerial is going to be a materialized. Both is that pass it to Maggie.
No, maybe you could pass it to someone else, Hema. Do you have a question for someone else, or does someone else have a question or a statement? I'll throw it to Andrew and Peter because they're never lacking in something to say.
That's right, never lacking. I mean, I was very much interested in what Sally was talking about. I mean, like there's simply no question that awareness lies at the heart of the practice. You know, I think that, but I think it's only half. It's the bit you can do in a practice which the other half of which is a mystery. You know, so it's the bit you can actually bring to it and apply yourself to. You can't actually apply yourself to surprise. There's no, you know, if you go, I want to surprise myself, boom. I mean, it's so the practice of attention and working with your attention is the means by which you can discover what it is that's unknown. So that, you know, it's a kind of controversial kind of set of words, but you could say conscious and unconscious if you wanted to, but I wouldn't. I would just talk about the working between the known and the unknown. And it's important to have tools that allow you to work up to the border between those two things. Then on top of that, you know, I do think this thing about, well, why are you improvising is actually a very important question, you know. So if you're in a process of choreography, then you improvise to generate material, which then gets shaped and polished and rearranged and therefore the awareness is necessary so you can retain the material to re-enter it to do all of that work, you know. But for me as an improviser who's only interested in performing improvisation, I don't have to be able to recall the material in any kind of explicit way. The attention is that I keep finding it, so I keep putting my attention on what to find, what to find. And I don't have to then be able to, you know, for me the idea of remembering material is not very relevant. I'm always finding, and in that finding associating, which may take me in loops, which may return me to material I ever have. But I don't actually, like when I do something, go, now I must remember that, I will need it later. I'm almost never in that mode as an improviser performer. Whereas if I need to come back to the material for purposes of choreography or making, then maybe that is a necessary skill. But yeah.
I don't fully agree with that, because I think actually sometimes sometimes I find it quite interesting to work with memory really deliberately. You know, like to spend time where you do pay attention in such a way that you come back to it and feel how it changes and shifts and deepens. So for me, there's kind of different modes. There is that thing about you know, working with attention, what's going on in the here and now, present, what's going on with the body, asking questions about, you know, what's going on. Very basic question. There is all, you know, but there are all those, you know, yeah, but I do enjoy that stuff about, you know, like, well, you know, sometimes deliberately trying to remember things and going back to them, and having that sense of, because if you can't say you're performing for an hour, you want to be able to have a sense of shape of piece. You're composing, you're choreographing, or, you know, creating a story or whatever on the fly, but you kind of still need to be able to go back to certain things and have that sense of reference points that kind of emerge and the emergent structure.
Yes.
And that does mean there's memory involved. So, you know, and then there's that awareness of the structure. So there's kind of, you know, so there is kind of memory at play as well as awareness, and also that sense of when we're in control and when we're pushing ourselves to the edge of being surprised by things, and or having that. So it's times when we're kind of looking for being open to the unexpected, and there's lots of ways to get to that edge, you know, whether it's even just through our imagination or, you know, somehow physically driving ourselves to the point where we just don't know what's going to happen next and haven't got time to control the next step or the next thought or the next movement. Like, things just come, and sometimes we just don't know where they come from.
Could we take a vote now as to whether you agree with me or Peter? Put your hand up. Goes for Peter. No.
I'm Peter.
I think,
sorry, Andrew, but
I think
can
we're
I
going
make a response?
talk to Tony. Oh, yes. Then we're going to. Tony's got something to talk to us about. Something prepared. Sally, go on.
Shall I go now? Okay, Tony, do you want to go? Because you're ready?
You go. You go.
Oh, okay, I'll go. Thank you. So I was going to respond again to Andrew in that sorry, Tony, in that just to be perhaps to be clearer about what I was kind of throwing into the pot is that I'm not thinking about, okay, now I'm going to be surprised, therefore, oh, and now I'm surprised. It's almost if something surprising happens in that moment of performance, then I think for me it's useful to know where that evolved from and what my response was to that, so that perhaps next time, if I'm surprised, I don't have the same response. So it's almost, for me, developing perhaps an awareness of and this is kind of a kind of key part of my practice, knowing what I do and why I do it, so that I can begin to develop maybe a less habitual way of improvising. And for me, I think that if I know what I do and why I do that, then I can perhaps choose to do that, or I can choose not to do that. So in a sense, I'm attempting to maybe develop my palette, my vocabulary, my ability to respond, so that I don't do the same thing all the time in a surprising situation. So that's why I was going to vote for Peter. Yeah.
But it's not really a popularity contest. I just want to bring that up now. It seems like an appropriate moment to bring it up with Peter now going solo. I was serious about doing a duet with Bangalore. This would be something for me to explore, and would be a great opportunity. So if you would join me, I would be really happy to dance with you across the world. Would you be able to do that? And can we swap between us, maybe, Ali? So we move together, and this isn't the World Wide Web anymore. This is the Worldwide Duet.
The WWD.
Hema, did you see that he's asking you to dance with him?
Yeah, I got it. Yes, I would.
It's a shame you can't see both simultaneously. Huh? No.
Should I respond to you or should I follow you?
Tony asked you to.
Should I respond to you or should I follow you or just go with the feel? Can you hear me?
You can improvise.
Yeah. Okay.
So in terms of swapping the camera, so Alejandro, should there be, because we can see both of you, just one of you in a little window, so maybe it's more like every 20 seconds or something rather than backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards.
It's like watching a tennis match, isn't it?
Probably can, Tony. She could see you like this.
Where's Hema? You should pick it. Maybe it's being managed by Alejandro.
Yeah.
It's almost like a, what's it called, stopgap animation. Where it, it's a great quality. Stop animation, I think, yeah.
Okay. Tony, Hema.
Hello.
So, can we go back to Sally and Miranda for a while and continue their conversation together? What do you think?
Yeah,
Well,
great.
I'm sulking, so I can leave me out.
I was thinking that for me that there's this space between improvisation that's for performance and improvisation that's for generating choreographic material. I feel like maybe for me as a dancer, it's a practice that can exist in the studio by myself that's just about checking the body, and it's this way of seeing what's going on in the body, and purely in terms of mechanical things like injuries and how things are feeling, as well as this coming to understand the information that you've injected into this thing. And I think particularly for maybe independent dancers who are injecting a lot of information into their bodies, improvisation is this really important way of coming to understand what's going on inside the body, not performance and before it's being used as choreographic material, but literally just to understand the body as a dancer, as a moving body.
I think it's a great way to tap into all that knowledge and experience and skills base that we have. I think it's a really great way to begin to explore, and I kind of love this idea of kind of mining or excavating before anything gets laid down, before anything gets proposed or fixed. Just to mine that kind of resource of training and experience and movement practices as as material.
And I think it's a really important part of a dancer's practice to intimately understand what they do before someone else maybe decides what they want them to do.
So you mentioned earlier about having kind of input or feedback from other people. Can I ask, in your practice, how much of that do you, maybe it's difficult to answer, how much of that do you respond to? Because if it's about bodily knowledge and you are the site of that knowledge, then how much kind of external direction do you respond to as an improviser?
I think it's a wonderful thing when you have outside injections of inspiration or directions, because in a way it frees you to be the intelligent body for a while. So I think those outside interjections are really important to find more in this body that perhaps you wouldn't have found just in your own improvisation, but someone else entering into that improvisation with directions or suggestions is a wonderful thing, I think, for a dancer to let someone else direct this thing that they ultimately have complete control over. But external informations will absolutely change what information comes to the surface onto the body.
And do you ever? Can I ask one more question? Am I okay for time?
One more. Yes.
Cool. Okay, thank you. I wish I've just forgotten.
Throw it over to somewhere else in the world.
I'm going to have to improvise. Oh my God.
Sally, could I ask you that same question you just asked? Like, I love that question you just asked about what is the role of kind of external feedback for the improviser. You know, given that in the end, as an improviser, you're there alone making the decision. So, what is the role of external feedback, and what would your answer be to that?
That I think it's a really valuable source of information and developing my awareness. I haven't done much, but I've done a little action theatre, and I can remember one task or kind of practice within that is to have somebody kind of give you kind of feedback and input whilst working, whilst improvising, which I can recall drew my attention to perhaps parts of my body that weren't my main focal point. So it might be that if I'm dealing with this rhythm in my hands and actually what my left foot is doing, I'm not aware of, but by having somebody draw my attention externally to my left foot, there's a whole kind of wealth of information there that I can begin to mine. But if I'm not aware of it, then I can't draw on it. So I think sometimes having that external input develops one's awareness, develops my awareness of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, what I might do. So I think it's a really valuable tool to have that external input.
And is that something you do as a teacher too?
To give students that external input? Oh yes. Yeah. But I think it's about finding that fine line between, wow, just constantly giving, in which case the student or the improviser is just saturated with information, and therefore what do they process? Or not giving any. So therefore there's a So I guess it's about kind of just finding that balance between how much to give when, how much to back off, what kind of information to give.
And I'm wondering what Tony would have to say about that too.
I'm glad you asked, Andrew. Thank you. To me, when in the workshop, I think a balance between making a space for people to explore the things we've been talking about in the body, balanced with doing actual performances, and like Ruth Sapora's ideas and Ros does this as well, getting feedback as you perform. I think it's a very valuable process for people to go through. And I always, always, always at the end of a teaching session withdraw all the restraints so that people then get to try all that out without having to think about doing, you know, bringing their attention into a particular thing, but actually trying out all the things that they feel like have happened to them during the session.
Do you have a question for anyone, Tony?
Why the ferrymen?
Why the ferryman?
Well,
good question.
Good question.
Very good question. We don't know.
We needed a title for the show.
Yeah.
We were in Berlin. Had to come up with a title. So
A lot of pressure on Peter.
A lot of pressure on me. We did a performance in Berlin that evolved as the content, that we became two ferrymen within it, within that duet.
One of us was an honest, hard-working, real ferryman. The other one was a mad, religious maniac who was trying to convert every passenger into their incredible. I'll let you decide who was who.
I was going to say, who was who?
Well, I don't know if it was so straightforward.
Oh, it was completely straightforward.
Oh, it was
one
not.
was honest and reliable with big, strong hands, and the other one was fine and seen, aesthetic, and
yeah. The other one was most likely to just drop you off the side of the boat.
Yes.
Anyhow.
Anyway.
So.
That's such
it's helpful to have a name for a show. I felt like it was a great metaphor for what improvisation is about. So it enabled me to write something to describe what we do, because basically the idea of ferrying people across the River Styx is a bit like a performance. You're taking people on a journey. You don't know where it's going to go. There's a lot of mysteries, a lot of unknown for us and for the audience. There's that sense of discovery. So it's a useful sort of metaphor.
And there's me thinking it was an homage to Christa Berg.
Yes, this has come up, and Peter is wearing a red dress.
No. Andrew is wearing a red dress.
Okay, we're kind of getting to the end of the time of our meeting together.
Are you wearing the red dress?
I'm wearing the red dress and the orange trousers. I'm trying to stand out. No, look here, Tony's got some red trousers. Martin's being chic, so's Kat here. But as a group, don't you think it makes a lovely family photograph, the group of us?
Excellent.
So I'm feeling, but hey, you know, we're a group. Andrew and Peter are a pair, Miranda and Sally, and Hema's there by herself, feeling sick but looking very chic. So, Hema, I'm wondering not to leave you out because you're not there having conversation with someone, whether or not you'd like to add in, or if there's anything that you would like to ask anyone or share more with us about your practice.
I have a question. It's a general question because I have done most of the time solo, which, yeah, I have worked with the larger picture of the group, but I have a question. It's how much the video helps, you know, in terms of when you're improvising, how many of you have the habit of or the practice of using the video? It's a question, or it's just a saying. Would anybody like to respond to it, or no? Don't respond. That's also fine.
I think it
I'll respond. Oh no, go on then. Go on. Go ahead.
I don't have a lot to say. I was just going to say
Who was that?
I don't routinely watch videos of the work that I've done or I've done with Andrew, but every once in a while I get to watch it, and I do find it actually quite helpful feedback. We were talking about feedback earlier, just to see how it looks from the outside, which is something you don't get to see very often. You know. But I also find it a little bit stressful watching video of my performances because I feel like I'm reliving the whole thing. So I just find it quite exhausting. But it is a very helpful tool.
Is there something that you miss or that's added extra that exists in the video that you don't think's happening in your memory of the live, Peter?
Oh, very often, especially when I'm performing with Andrew, because I may not know what he's actually doing half the time, because he might be behind me doing something, so I don't see what the audience sees. But so if I look at it on video, I'll say, "Oh, okay, that's why that was so." You know, yeah, I just get to see the full picture rather than what I experienced within it. Yeah.
Mainly in the process, especially when you're alone in the studio. One is about, yes, trying to find out something, the question to have a clarification of something is going on in your head, especially when you're doing a solo in an alone room. And then sometimes watching yourself in the mirror, it's almost like another, what do you say, a live camera, which is not recorded at all. And it's my own eyes is looking at me. Another way, another camera, which is a memory, is there to revisit your memory. That's what I meant. One is about the memory of memory, which you're seeing. Sometimes the body memory is there. It wants to revisit that same movement or something which you want to. Oh, something I did, but I forgot that. What was it? Another one is just a memory, which is from the memory, a body memory of the movement. That's what I was asking. How much the video helps, especially when you're alone. In a practice in a studio, and of course the performance. I don't like watching videos of any performance. It's one of these things. I love to watch performance alive. But when it comes to improvising something based on one particular idea or don't have an idea, that's what I felt. Just to put in a word, it's not a question. It's just a comment.
For me, I find that there's no substitute in studio practice for a like-minded practice partner, so that I feel that I'm more aware of what I'm doing if I'm being witnessed by someone who is interested in the practice, if there's a mutual interest, than having to go and look at a video of me struggling through a studio performance. The same thing doesn't apply for me to performance. I think it's really useful to see yourself perform and see how you perform in front of an audience and under pressure. But for studio practice, I've tried video and I find it too cumbersome and time-consuming. I'd rather actually get up and do another impro to feel what's going on, to redo something rather than dwell on something I've already done.
Sally had something to share.
I did. Shall I? Okay. I was. I'm going to agree with Peter again.
Andrew's just left the room.
Andrew, come back. Just because I think, particularly in terms of Hema's question about solo practice, I think it's really valuable to have that kind of document, if you like, of the work, so that you can reflect on it, so that you can make choices about what's working, what's not, and why. And so I think, again, it ties into my practice in terms of what do I do and why do I do it, so that sometimes what it feels like is not what it looks like. And so if I have visual information, kind of visual evidence, if you like, visual documentation, as well as my own embodied experience, then I feel like I have a lot of material to be able to go on to inform my practice. So I do use video, but I think less and less as I'm getting on. I think I use video less. I think I'm less interested perhaps in what it looks like than I used to be. Probably because I'm getting older. My hair's going grey, that's what it is.
And I agree with Tony. It's hard to substitute for having someone to talk to say, talk about what you enjoyed about what you've done. And Or even writing down, you know, maybe even writing down sometimes could help, you know, just to record in a journal or something about how you felt about what you've done. Because it's almost like you need that conversation, and you don't get that with a video.
Yeah. Where's Andrew gone?
Oh, he's here. He's behind the computer. I'm scared to move the computer. So. Oh, there he is.
It's being videoed, Andrew.
The whole world is watching.
Yeah, well, I've lost my reputation. This is the worst forum I've ever been in, Margie. I've been vilified internationally.
Just because Sally sided with Peter a few times, I think Tony sided with Peter as well.
Yeah.
But there's been no other votes, Andrew. I have to say that I'm incredibly happy with the whole conversation, and, you know, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. And just in terms of that kind of sense of collision of space from all of us joining together and what's transposed between us, I think that's been fantastic. It's been a long time in the planning. And I'd like to thank here Tony, Martin, Kat, and over to you, to Hema, and then Niranjan, would you like to appear?
Thank you.
Niranjan,
Thank you so much.
Is Niranjan there, Hema? Is Niranjan, who's been helping Hema doing the technical coordination from Bangalore. Hema is a choreographer and also the rehearsal director, dancer with Atacalary Movement Arts Centre that Critical Path has a partnership with, and an artist, Jade Dewey Tangle, was in Bangalore in 2013 at the Facets workshop, and then Patrick Lucky Lati will go there next year for the Facets workshop and present at the Dance Biennale, and I will go there. I'm a mentor at the Facets workshop. And then I'd like to Andrew and to Peter, lovely to see you together again. And
lovely to be here. So
no, it's fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. We've got a fan club here, Andrew, who can't wait for you to arrive on Sunday night. Andrew, I love you.
Oh
my God.
Oh, they would. Oh no. Yeah, it's been great to be here. Thank you. See you, Nikki.
And Miranda, Sally, thanks for getting together and sharing your morning in London, or in Nottingham, sorry. And I think Sally got on the train and came up from Northampton, is it, or Leicester?
Leicester, yeah, not far from Nottingham. It's okay, yeah. But thank you so much for the invitation to be part of it. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah. And Matt, would you like to appear?
I think Matt's in another room watching this on YouTube.
All right. So Matt Cornell and Miranda are at Dance 4 for a month, having an exchange. Miranda's apparently asked why she's gone to the other side of the world to dance with Matt, who she lives around the corner from.
He generally lives in my house.
I think that you know, we talk a lot about what it is that the shift in dynamic and thinking and possibility away from the everyday living in a residency is really freeing and exciting, and I'm sure you've got jet lag. You're looking much better today than you did on Wednesday. Looking much fresher. And yeah, and what?
Peter and I would be remiss if we didn't thank Paul Sewell Norton for this wonderful festival here and his invitation to get us back working together. The Move Me Festival here has been great too, so I just want to make sure that's reiterated after your initial welcome too. So, but thank you very much, Paul, for our invitation too.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Paul too on behalf of Critical Path, and there's something that Paul, Strut Dance, Critical Path and Dance House has got together, which is called the Dance Sites Network, which is a way to create kind of mobility for independent dance artists. And this symposium, and then also facets of the Move Me Festival, has been an initiative of the Dance Sites Network to create the possibility for Ros, Andrew and Rosalind and Alejandro to go between Melbourne, Perth, Sydney, and then Rosalind and Andrew are also going to Brisbane. So it's really fantastic to have that kind of shift, and we'll thank the Australia Council and the Creative Australia initiative. And so, Alejandro, do you want to come over as well and be visible? Oh, there he is. He's got himself visible.
Is he in a small box or something?
But, you know, it's been something that I've felt really, really kind of committed to making this kind of network through the internet in a very DIY way happen, because the resources are completely there for us to create this kind of shared conversation and network, and it just takes a little bit of technology and practice and a commitment to doing it, and we can be in the same space and share something together. So fantastic to have you all here, and you'll be able to go to this on YouTube now. We'll put it up on Critical Path website. That's all I've got to say. Anything from anyone else? Any last words?
I'd just like to say that now's the time to say good night. Good night. Sleep tight. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, great to meet you all and to see you.
Lovely dancing with you.
Do you want to stop the broadcast, Alejandro?
Stop it. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.